long time. And so when you have to draw the line somewhere and say this is our start point and this is our foundation, a lot of people got cut out. And I don't know how to say what we could have done different to make sure that more legacy operators were able to enter into the industry, but it had been illegal to grow off-site of a non-property compliant location for 5 years. So it's been known that that has been an illegal place to be, but in this industry of allowing the legacy people a first opportunity to enter into the regulated market, I think we waited a little too long in Los Angeles to really allow those legacy people in Los Angeles. And there's going to be some unfortunate legacy people who are not going to make it. We are not a normal business. I mean, when I look across the street at one of the largest routes in the country, and I know that I pay almost the same kind of business taxes they do with my $5 million of revenue and their $200 million of revenue, and we have the same business taxes, we are not equal businesses. So we have to look, say that I'm paying close to 8% on average between my 5 and 10% gross receipts tax for a local tax. Like, we're not a normal business. And being taxed at 60%, and then at the end of the year having my accountant say, wow, your 280 taxes, well, you're going to owe another 400,000. You're like, whoa, I did not necessarily budget for that. And so how do you budget for an unknown of all these taxes? And since we have swung the pendulum so far and are not giving any relief to businesses just trying to be good operators, it's just been a very difficult time. And I think Los Angeles has a good opportunity to really show the strength that we have as a community and rebuild together. But we're still waiting for fire to come and do inspections. So we don't know what the attrition rate of the fire department is going to be, where the building department of planning is going to be. And since a lot of these variables are still up in the air, there's a lot of insecurity because we've invested, like, my whole life savings is currently in my business. I don't have a savings anymore. And because it's all right here and what used to be a nice return on investment, now it's a maybe. And that maybe is becoming more and more difficult to say, who is willing to take their life savings, put it into this industry again, and start from scratch, because that's kind of what we're doing. We're starting from the beginning. We're well regulated, we're well taxed. I just want to make sure that those taxes and representation really go to how are you effectively helping our businesses make it in this particular new regulated industry? How is the state of California doing enforcement and really helping us? How are they lowering state taxes so that we don't have to have a huge burden with 280E on federal? Can the state help us out? Can there be some places where we do give to get? I mean, the states didn't collect a lot of taxes. And I don't think it was because they didn't think there was a lot of sales. The velocity of sales were not there because there wasn't enough retailers, there wasn't enough compliant product, because they created a system that bottlenecked. And that bottleneck lowered the number of regulated sales. Those number of regulated sales reduced our taxes, and now it looks like, well, the industry's not moving as fast as it could. We're not utilizing all the infrastructure that has been created over the last 25 years plus in California to the biggest benefit for the most taxes in return. We've gone too far to regulate, and we're missing out on a lot of those legacy people who need more than just 6 months to a year to transition. I look at some of the power plant companies, and they're given 25 years to adapt their coal-burning power plant to a natural gas one. 25 years. I'm given a year, 18 months, 6 months to adapt, and sometimes it's 2 weeks to adapt to a brand new regulation that just got dropped yesterday. That is not the kind of transitional time this kind of infrastructure needs to really be efficient.
So we're here with, many of the folks in this room are either cannabis advocates, cannabis policy advocates, cannabis businesses, and this conversation involves many different stakeholders. To include all of those folks, community members, law enforcement, health officials, and I think it's going to take, and we've seen, it's going to take a collaborative effort for us to move this process forward. As a regulator, we deal with the other side of the coin of all of those same challenges. And so I want to hear from Joe, what have been some of the biggest challenges in trying to either manage the retail and distribution space, what have been the concerns that you hear from community members or elected officials about retail operations? Because as a regulator, we kind of sit in the middle of all of these different stakeholders and translate and share information and try and move the needle forward. So what has that process been for you? What have been some of your biggest challenges?
All of them. I find myself kind of in the uniquely, I think, in the middle of the public, the elected officials, and the industry, and I think I understand the 360 view on all of this. I do think taxation is too high. Fundamentally, what we're trying to do is apply economics to the regulation of this substance, and economic principles still apply no matter how much you want to ignore them. So we do need to be sensitive to that. I think that really is really the collective, the totality of it, right? For the elected, from the elected's perspective, I think they look at this and be like, okay, public voted for this, but I know that they're not really 100% supportive of it, because when I go out and have a community meeting, everyone's upset that there's a dispensary being planned near my house, or someone wants to open up a cultivation facility, 3 miles from my house. I'm pretty sure it's going to ruin my neighborhood and ruin my property values. And for the internal organizations of the city, we also face our own challenges. We, as a city, began taking applications for cultivation in the month of April a year ago. We didn't have, you're required to get a conditional use permit in the city of Sacramento. We didn't have a single hearing, I think, until July. And it wasn't because we just sat around going, well, we're just put that on the bottom of the stack. It took 3 months for planning staff to figure out what they were evaluating, right? I mean, this is all still so new for everyone, and I think that is the biggest challenge, is that it's all so new for everyone. The regulations are new for the industry, becoming like, I don't mean this like in a hopefully it's not taken as an offense, but becoming like a business. Like, I know a lot of legacy actors, and yes, they were a business, but they weren't really in a business. If you're in the cannabis industry, you're in the compliance industry. It's really what you are in now. But it's also new, I think, for everyone. It's just I get to kind of see it from every perspective.
Yeah, I just want to echo Joe's sentiment. Part of the challenge in the city of Los Angeles is that folks want access, and licensing programs don't pop out of thin air. They need to be created. And so for a city of 4 million people with 15 different elected officials and 96 neighborhood councils, there were a lot of different opinions to consider. And a lot of the folks who are in this room are on one side of the spectrum. Most folks kind of fall in the middle of the bell curve, and then you have folks on the other side that are completely opposed. But I do think that it has been difficult for elected officials and public administrators to deal with this issue. Cannabis is sexy for the folks in this room, but as an elected official, cannabis is not that sexy, and no one wants to hang their hat on something that's not guaranteed. And the success of this industry and the impacts of this industry are well known. When's the last time we legalized cannabis? This is all new. And so I appreciate folks like Joe, like other elected officials who have taken leadership on these issues, because it can be a real struggle. And I think it's going to be important for the industry to actively participate and identify those champions at local, federal, and state levels, because those are the folks who are going to be able to move the needle forward, while everyone else has their either their heads in the sand or they're sitting on their hands. Pamela, looks like you want to comment.
Kat made a great point, and I think this is really important. I served previously as a special city attorney for the city of Hollister, drafting their regulatory program or the ordinance with them. So I have a unique lens of looking at it from the city's perspective and from the operators. Be involved. Like Kat's saying, these programs don't happen overnight. Most of these staff at cities never thought cannabis was something that was going to be part of their everyday rhetoric that they would have to understand, let alone draft an ordinance. So be that active participant. If you want to operate in that city, go in and meet with city staff. Go in and meet with the city council members. Offer them a suite of options. Sometimes we'll put together a package of the ordinances and the different languages that we thought for our operators work the best, and then propose draft ordinance language. I have drafted ordinances for several cities across the state on behalf of clients that gave a cheesecake style menu of operations, is what we like to call it. We did a whole hog ordinance, and we really focused in on what was important for the operators we represented and provided it as a baseline tool for discussion for that city or that county to use. It is well received. They want to understand. If a city's dipping their toe into regulation, and Kat and Joe are great, it's a good opportunity to provide a meaningful information so they understand your process, they understand what you're going to go through as a business, they understand how your business functions since it is different and new. Don't miss that opportunity. It's critical. If you come to them at the point of the application and you've never showed up at a meeting and you've never been engaged, you're just a name on a piece of paper. Now, the converse is that is don't go in and think because you're providing these things you are guaranteed a license. You are not. Don't go in and because the mayor is your friend thinking nothing to worry about. This is you in the bag. That's not it. This is a pure providing information and shepherding the process and being a source of, hey, you know what? These regulations came out. Really, what's going on there, and updating them as that process unfolds.
I think other cities, just to add to that, I think other cities coming online is going to take some time. There's still political risk to this. You look at how Prop 64 fared in a lot of these counties and a number of these cities, and it wasn't 60-40. It was a little bit closer to 50-50, and there's not a lot of electeds that are willing to go out there and say, hey, you know what? 50-50, that's good enough. I'm going to lead the charge on this one and risk my political career on it. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time. But what is going to delay that is going to be poor experiences by cities like Sacramento and Los Angeles if and when things go wrong. We've had a very positive experience so far, and I don't expect any. But bad operators or poor operators or people over-promising in this space and under-delivering just as a whole, I think potentially slow down the process.
And then I do want to allow for Q&A. If we have an opportunity, Susan, will we be able to do a little bit of Q&A? All right, so we'll do about 3 questions. We're going to have folks come up, and Susan has a mic, so if there are folks who have questions for the panelists, please raise your hand. And we'll actually, I think we have folks lining up, so sir, if you could come over here and line